Tonight, help wanted. With unemployment rising, President Obama appeals for ideas for putting Americans back to work.
I am open to every demonstrably good idea.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, this time they were invited. But the state dinner crashers are no-shows as Congress investigates the White House security breach. And boy meets girl.
It was good at first. And then what happened?
An alarming increase in violence among teenage couples as technology makes abuse easier than ever.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. First thing tomorrow, the government will put out the latest unemployment numbers, and they're expected to show the country lost another 130,000 jobs last month. Since the recession began 2 years ago, more than 7 million jobs have vanished. That's more than 7 every minute. Today, President Obama called business and labor leaders to the White House to ask for their help. Our Chip Reed is there tonight. And Chip, did any good or new ideas come out of this summit?
Well, yes, they did, Katie. The president, for example, said he liked the idea of using public schools to teach students during the day and to train workers on new technologies at night. And he's also looking at some ideas, a variety of ideas on tax breaks for small businesses to help them expand. Critics, though, say this job summit was really about public relations, a way for the president to get out ahead of bad unemployment numbers coming out tomorrow. The Democrats' word of the day,
Jobs, 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 jobs.
was hard to miss.
It's jobs, 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 jobs.
But what they plan to do about 10.2% unemployment is far less clear. At his job summit, the president lowered expectations right from the start, citing limited resources.
We'll need to look beyond the old standbys and fallbacks and come up with the best ideas that give us the biggest bang for the buck.
With a $1.5 trillion deficit, the president says the nation can't afford another major stimulus package, so he invited 130 executives, small business owners, union leaders, and economists to brainstorm over creative and inexpensive ideas to stimulate private sector job growth. The president said there were some good ideas. Republicans, though, say the summit was little more than a political stunt. House Republican leader John Boehner taunted the president with his own "Where Are the Jobs" summit, claiming that 3.5 million jobs have been lost since the president took office.
It's all the job-killing policies that are being offered by this administration and this Congress.
Republican Party Chair Michael Steele called it another example of President Obama's PR presidency, where he stages photo ops and events to distract citizens and the media from his administration's failures.
What do we want? Jobs! When do we want them? Now!
Unions and liberal activists are also unhappy with the president, demanding hundreds of billions more on infrastructure projects. Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to use money left over from the bank bailout.
And the more jobs we create, the more money comes into the public till and therefore reduces the deficit.
Tomorrow, the president heads for Allentown, Pennsylvania for what the White House calls the first stop on a jobs listening tour. And he'll probably get an earful because the unemployment rate in Allentown is about 12.5%. Katie?
Chip Reed reporting from the White House. As usual, Chip, thank you. That 10.2% unemployment rate translates to 15.7 million Americans looking for work. Now, to get that number down, national correspondent Dean Reynolds tells us it will take not only new jobs, but new training.
In an economy struggling with the highest rate of joblessness in more than 25 years, where even highly skilled workers are being shown the door, the last thing anyone wants to hear is this.
There's no ray of sunshine in the very near term, not in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months.
Economists say that because new people enter the job market all the time, the U.S. needs to add at least 125,000 jobs a month to keep the unemployment rate from rising. But we've been losing that number or more month after month. No need to tell that to Frank Fonz. He lost his job as a banker 8 months ago and has managed just 12 interviews since.
We're working all day long on trying to locate the next paid opportunity.
Another problem is that while there are actually more than 2.5 million job openings, many require skills the unemployed will need time to acquire. That's what they're trying to do at the Chicago Vocational Training Center, the one Treasury Secretary Geithner visited in October when he met Lorene Baker. Tomorrow, Baker will complete a 14-week course in woodworking.
Wow, I can't believe I could do this. They've taught me a lot.
But the demand for this kind of traditional manufacturing skill versus a more high-tech capability has not been growing, nor has the need of prospective employers. At Chicago Booth Manufacturing, which sells mostly to restaurants, orders have slowed because the company's customers can't get loans to expand.
If they can't get that money, they can't buy our furniture.
Frank Fonz used to deal with those kinds of companies from his desk at the bank. Now, with time on his hands, he says he'll be paying attention to the President's Job Summit.
But I'm not necessarily expecting miracles out of that.
He knows there could be a long way to go. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Chicago.
Supporters of Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke say the economic crisis would have been even worse were it not for him. But he came under fire from critics as the Senate considers his nomination to a second term. And that tops tonight's CBS MoneyWatch.com notebook. Kentucky Republican Jim Bunning said he'll do everything he can to retire Bernanke.
The AIG bailout alone is reason enough to send you back to Princeton.
But Bernanke is expected to be reconfirmed as Fed chairman. A new sign that the road to economic recovery will be long and bumpy. A report out today says retail sales fell in November after 2 months of gains. And a major media purchase was announced today. Comcast said it will buy a majority stake in NBC Universal from General Electric for nearly $14 billion. If the deal goes through, it will give the nation's largest cable company control of the NBC television network and about 24 cable channels, including USA, Sci-Fi, and Bravo. Bravo features reality programs like The Real Housewives. That's the show Mikkel and Tariq Salahi have been auditioning for. Today, the couple was asked to testify before Congress not about their TV careers, but about how they got into that state dinner without an invitation. But as Bob Orr tells us, they were no-shows.
This time, they had a formal invitation and even a reserved table with name cards. But today, Mikkel and Tariq Salahi snubbed Congress and refused to testify about their White House party-crashing escapade. That left the hot seat to Secret Service Director Mark Sullivan.
In our line of work, we cannot afford even one mistake.
Sullivan said the Secret Service was solely responsible for the breach, and 3 uniformed officers have now been suspended.
Clearly, this protocol was not followed. A mistake was made in errant judgment.
Sullivan's candor, though, didn't stop his critics, who said the security failure presented a real danger.
Severe violation and potential threat to the President and Vice President of the United States.
But the Secret Service chief disagreed, saying the Salahis were checked by metal detectors and other undisclosed measures.
I feel confident, based on what I've heard, based on what I've seen, based on what I've been briefed on, that they did not provide a risk to the President.
And in an informal chat with reporters today, the President gave strong support to the Secret Service.
I trust them 100%, not just with me, but with my wife and my children.
Meanwhile, the Salahis hunkered down in their Virginia home, leaving their agent to issue a statement saying they've already cooperated with investigators, and there is nothing further they can do to assist Congress in its inquiry. But they were not the only no-shows at the hearing. Citing separation of powers, the White House blocked Social Secretary Desiree Rogers from testifying about her office's role in the security flap.
Staff here don't go to testify in front of Congress. She will not be testifying in front of Congress.
Past administrations have used the same argument to block staff testimony in politically charged and highly controversial cases, like Whitewater under President Clinton and the U.S. Attorney firings controversy under President Bush. But the use of the tactic in this party-crashing case brought an angry rebuke from Republican Peter King.
They are stonewalling. And for our committee to work with the White House, there has to be an element of trust. They have breached that trust.
While the White House is supporting Rogers, Congress now is threatening the Salahis with subpoenas, assuring their 15 minutes of fame will be extended. Katie?
Bob Orr in Washington. Thank you, Bob. And coming up next, right here on the CBS Evening News, parents pay attention. Teen dating violence is on the rise, sometimes with deadly results. Many of us have fond memories of our first love, but there can also be a very dark side to teenage relationships. About 30% of America's teens say they were emotionally, sexually, or physically abused by their boyfriends and sometimes even girlfriends last year. The problem received national attention last February when pop star Rihanna was abused by her boyfriend, Chris Brown. And it was the subject of a summit in Washington today hosted by Attorney General Eric Holder and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan. The federal government is joining a growing chorus of advocates who are shining a light on the problem and educating teenagers as well as their parents.
Think I need you? I don't care.
For too many teenagers, this is what dating in America looks like.
You make me so pissed.
All I remember was landing face first on the floor.
Tina, 18, whose appearance we've altered for her safety, says during her 6-month relationship, the violence spiraled out of control.
He got on top of me and he was slapping me back and forth. And he said, "Next time, do me a favor, call me baby, say that you love me."
Raped, beaten, and berated on a regular basis, she stayed with him, believing the abuse was part of a normal relationship.
I knew my aunt went through it, so I thought, if she stuck it out with him, with her husband for years, that I should just do the same and keep my mouth shut.
When this outgoing 15-year-old, who did not want to be identified, met a cute boy in one of her high school classes, she was smitten.
We had the same friends, we liked the same things, so it was good at first.
And then what happened?
We started to slowly separate because we would fight a lot. He was very controlling. Would always want to know where I am, what I'm doing.
It's upsetting to you to even talk about it.
Just when someone does that to you, you feel a loss of yourself.
The controlling behavior eventually turned violent. Things got so bad she began skipping classes and avoiding work. Then he started stalking her.
I was always locking my doors. We had a house alarm on my house, always turning that on. Always looking behind my shoulder to see who it was.
These two stories illustrate an alarming trend of escalating violence in teenage relationships.
National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline, how can I help you?
Calls and online chats to the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline went up nearly 600% from March of 2007 to March of this year. And a recent survey shows even 25% of tweens say they've experienced physical violence in their romantic relationships.
Stop crying and stay down.
They're growing up in a world where violence is everywhere.
Stay down or I will finish you off.
Where teens are constantly bombarded with pop culture images objectifying and degrading women.
In this generation, it's hard to resist the violence, and it's probably influencing the number of abusive relationships.
Add to that the evolving high-tech frontier. Relentless texting, constant instant messaging, and virtual mind games played out on social networking sites are all becoming tools of choice for abusive teenagers wanting to control their partners.
Teens are primarily using technology, and that has changed the dynamics, I think, in terms of the abuse that we're seeing.
Tragically for some, this cycle of dating violence can turn deadly.
This is a domestic violence-related homicide.
The victim is 19-year-old Emily Silverstein.
18-year-old girlfriend, Carrie Gorman.
Martinez was convicted for the brutal 2005 murder of Lindsay Ann Burke.
In 2003, Lindsay Ann Burke met former Navy seaman Geraldo Martinez at a friend's wedding. For the bubbly 21-year-old, there was an instant attraction. But a few months into the relationship, Lindsay's mother, Ann, noticed changes in her daughter. She became secretive, obsessed with instant messaging, and started to distance herself from friends. You saw this change in her behavior, and you were really at a loss in terms of what you could do to help her.
I did go to several counselors. Not one of them picked up on the warning signs of an abusive relationship.
After a tumultuous 2 years, Lindsay finally left Martinez. On the morning of September 14th, 2005, she went to his house to collect her things. In a fit of rage, Martinez repeatedly stabbed Lindsay and left her in his bathtub, where she bled to death.
Parents don't realize how much a part of their life their children really are until you lose one of them.
Ann's grief quickly turned to anger and then action.
You're going to learn about dating abuse and dating
A health teacher at a Rhode Island middle school for 23 years, she realized she had never discussed dating violence with her students.
I went back to work, looked in the eyes of my 8th grade students, and asked myself, so why is it that I'm teaching them about heart disease and substance abuse, but I'm not teaching them about this?
For 2 years, the Burke family pushed for legislation that would require dating violence awareness be taught in middle and high schools in Rhode Island.
And I'm hoping that the Lindsay Ann Burke Act will get passed.
The act passes.
In July 2007, the Lindsay Ann Burke Act was signed into law.
I know at that point, Lindsay was looking down and she was smiling. Destruction of a person is not only physical.
Today, Ann Burke is teaching her 8th graders the lessons her daughter, Lindsay, never had.
When it makes you feel bad inside, that's what makes it violence.
And in high school, students learn to identify red flags.
How many of you have seen relationships that look like that?
Like jealousy and controlling behavior that are often precursors to violence.
What might an incident be with somebody who's possessive or obsessive or overly jealous?
6 states have since passed similar legislation, and it's pending in 6 others.
Sometimes this guy I'm seeing spies on my social network pages.
Meanwhile, campaigns are using technology to combat the problem, sending out positive messages online. Students are also being enlisted across the country in peer-to-peer programs that help teens understand what makes a healthy relationship.
If someone has control over somebody else, what do they have? Power.
A program like this helped Tina get away from her abusive boyfriend. Now, she wants to help others.
I don't want this to keep on happening to young girls, or young boys for that matter. So with me opening up and telling them about my story, that they have realized that it is wrong, that they shouldn't be going through it.
If you need help or know someone who does, we've posted a list of resources on our website. Just go to cbsnews.com. And we'll be right back. More evidence linking smoking to cancer. A report today found lifelong smokers increase their risk of colorectal cancer by as much as 50%. Another report says women exposed to high levels of secondhand smoke are 18% more likely to develop breast cancer. Following up on a story from last night, scientists put poison in a canal south of Chicago to prevent Asian carp from reaching Lake Michigan, where they could wipe out other species of fish. Today, tens of thousands of dead fish were pulled from the canal, but so far no dead Asian carp are among them. In Italy, a remarkable medical experiment. A man who lost part of his left arm in a car crash was linked to a robotic hand by way of implanted electrodes. The electrodes allowed him to control the hand with his thoughts and even feel sensations through it. And coming up next, what a famous brain can tell us about our memories.
Toxic toys. Will new laws and an attitude change in China equal safer holiday shopping for parents? Tomorrow on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
We end tonight with the search for clues to one of the biggest mysteries there is, why we remember some things and forget others. Bill Whitaker tells us the search has taken researchers deep inside one of the most famous brains in all of science.
Today at the University of California San Diego Brain Observatory, scientists are shaving hair-fine slices from a frozen and very special brain, seeking to uncover the source of human memory.
The goal of the lab is to paint a picture of what the brain is like and how that picture actually is different and makes us, as I said, who we are.
It's the brain of an amnesiac researchers will never forget, Henry Mollison, who died last year at 82. As a young man, he suffered severe seizures. In an experimental procedure in 1953, a top brain surgeon removed tissue from either side of Mollison's brain. He lost the seizures and lost his ability to form memories. Neuroscientist Susan Corkin studied him for the next 50 years.
We have over 50 years of behavioral data. Now we will be able to link the behavioral data to what we find in his brain.
From him, scientists learned memories are formed in that very portion of the brain surgeons removed. Mollison could remember events before surgery, but after, memories vanished within 20 minutes. But he did remember JFK's assassination and retained motor skills like drawing and riding a bike, but he told Corkin he couldn't remember learning them.
What do you do to try to remember?
Well, that I don't know, because I don't remember.
The brain slicing procedure is live online. The samples will be digitized and put on the internet for researchers around the world to study, to zoom in to the tiniest neuron, like on Google Earth, and delve into the mind of the man who couldn't remember.
He revolutionized the science of memory.
Well, the way I figure it is what they find out about me helps them to help other people.
Leaving an unforgettable legacy for science. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. And we leave you now with the sign of the season.
2, 1, oh!
The First family lights the national Christmas tree. Good night.